Hello, this is Dr. Dennis Bielfeldt of the Christ School of Theology. We continue to talk about Duns Scotus here, and we've gone through some rather complex material having to do with his natural theology and his metaphysics. I'm happy to report to you now that the rest of the material here is not that difficult conceptually. We're going to talk a bit about natural law, his theory of grace and covenant. Now, we talked about the Potencia de Absoluta. You might remember that. This is the absolute power of God. Oh, you know what? I think when I put it up the last time, I don't know why I didn't add the I there. Of course, we're talking about the power of God, the absolute power of God. So all of you out there is going to say, oh, this guy messed up his Latin. And well, I'm sorry about that. It happens when you're at the board at times. But I do know that this is the distinction, ordinata. And this is, of course, a genitive, the absolute power of God. God can do anything that is not self-contradictory. However, he has ordered himself in a certain way. He's limited to all of that he could do. He's limited himself in a certain way with respect to the world. This is the ordained power of God, or the ordinated power of God. God could save an evil person, potentia de absoluta, but he does not save evil people, potentia de ordinata. Salvation through the death of Jesus is not necessary, potentia de absoluta, and this, by the way, is contrary to Anselm, remember, cur deus homo. He argues that salvation is necessary. But the salvation through the death of Jesus is made the way that it is by God's prior promises, potentia de ordinata. Okay. Well, we've seen that Scotus, of course, jettisons the emanationalist metaphysics. He emphasizes a free and contingent character of the present order. This is very much in keeping with everything he does here. Just think contingency, free. While there is nothing that humans can do to place obligation on God, potentia de absoluta, God has established a pactum. This pactum is that which is established, potentia de ordinata, such that God will God will accept certain actions as meritorious, potentia de ordinata. Oh boy. So God will not withhold his grace to the one who does what is within him. Facet quod, to do what in se est. God will not withhold his grace to the one facere quod in se est. God does what is within him. Now, what human beings can do that is within them are their works. Now we go back to, remember, merita de congruo. There are certain things they can do that are congruent with their will, right, and their abilities. But these things that they can do do not themselves merit salvation. Merita de condigno. Right? So the merita de congruo and the merita de condigno. These works that human beings can do according to their will do not themselves merit eternal life. They are not merita de condigno of eternal life. But given the pactum that God establishes, they do merit eternal life because of the grace of God. After God grants grace, meritorious works, merita de condigno, are now extrinsically denominated as merite condigno. They're considered by God to be merite condigno, and they put then a responsibility on God to perform on his part of the covenant and to give eternal life. Now, in all of this, the perspective from above is that everything is God's grace. God didn't have to do this. I mean, it's like these human beings are all going to hell in a handbasket, but out of the graciousness of God, he establishes this wonderful order so that if the human being can do just a little bit, just that little bit that was in him, God will not withhold his grace. And after that grace comes, then God, when God looks at mocks doing the pitiful things he does merite congruo, he's going to say, oh, I'm going to regard mocks as doing this merite condigno, and so mocks is going to have eternal life. So this is from above, everything is God's grace, but you know, if you're down here being mocks, well, everything seems a lot like law, right? You got to earn it. You got to do what is within you. And one of the things you were supposed to be able to do, at least you can love God above all things. Right? At least you can do that. I mean, you might not be able to, go out and help the poor and, serve in leprosy colonies and all that, but just love God above all things. All right, well, that's good. So the perspective from below is this is very much Pelagian. Freedom. We have freedom to do this or not. And if we do this and not that, then God will give us eternal life. But the perspective from above, it looks very Augustinian. God gives God's grace wherever God gives it. Now, on this view, grace has no psychological dimensions. And so I want some of you who think always that Catholic theology holds to the notion of intrinsic justification and infused grace to realize here that we have Catholic theology that doesn't hold to any kind of infused grace or not. Grace here is forensic. God regards these actions to be to have a certain kind of condignity, even though in themselves they don't. And he regards these actions to have a certain kind of condignity, propter Christum. But of course, he established the conditions of propter Christum. That means on account of Christ. So Scotus retains the Augustinian vocabulary of grace. But of course, this notion is not Augustinian. It's not a right-making. It's a rex sprecum. It's a correct sprecum, the pronouncement of justification. Scotus is criticized because his view of grace does not involve the transformation of the person, right? But he, in giving this account, is moving away from Augustinian predestinationalism, right? He's moving away from that, and he's giving human beings some freedom then to determine their fate. Scotus thinks one can love God above all things naturally, ex puris naturalibus, and grace then functions to connect one's acts to the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. Grace provides no empowerment. So what Scotus is doing is he's modifying Thomas's view on the important distinction between contritio and attritio. And I'm going to come back to that for our final lecture on Scotus. Stick around, we got one more, and it'll be a good one. So this is Dr. Dennis Bielfeldt of the Christ School of Theology.